Hi, I'm Antti Saario. I'm one of the artists who took part in the Eastern DC CSAT residency program. I was at the Cardiff School of Art and Design for my residency in March 2020, and it's a pleasure and a privilege to have been able to done that program, as well as to be introducing my creative work and contribution that I made for the festival to you in this short video. I'm aiming to give some bit more further context and details with regards to the piece itself, as well as my compositional arts and sound practice in general. I hope you will enjoy it. Thank you. The work I've created for the festival is a stereo fixed media composition, which is just under 17 minutes long, and is titled Uvet Didivet Sylfan Ksult Leaf, and the English translation of the title is The Endless Web Foundation Connect Flow. My apologies if for my Welsh pronunciation of the title. I wanted to explicitly highlight the two languages that were present throughout my residency and their presence in Cardiff. I wanted to also bring attention to the naming protocol of spaces that was utilized in the CSAT building. But beyond those facets, the importance of the title is drawing very heavily into a parallel practice that I have maintained for nearly 2 decades now, which is around bodywork and looking at tissue flow practices when working with postural work with human bodies, etc. And the piece is related to some concepts around how the human body operates effectively as an endless web, where we have the skeleton system and the tissue, connective tissue, for which this skeleton provides the space, and it's all about the ability for the human body to function very effectively. It requires the balance between the bone structures and the connective tissue to be such that it enables flow and efficiency of movement. And this became very pertinent from my observations of how the CSAT was operating, and the sense of flow and connectedness, and how that was built around the foundations of the design of the building and how that was laid out. And of course it has some further connections to how fixed media composition works, in that you affect any part of this recorded sound that you're working with, and everything else inevitably will have to adjust or move around that, akin to if we were to be working on the tissues of a human body. So here's the program note for the piece as submitted for the festival program purposes. And the first point being here that I want to draw attention to is that the piece continues this a long arc of works which are not connected to each other, but they're connected to my desire and ambition and intent to work with fixed media composition practice in a way that I'm producing sonic portraits or portrayals and or meditations on spaces, places, people or instruments. And in the past I've done meditation on English culture or the features of the Alderborough Festival, sonic portrayal of a Scottish singer-songwriter Joe Hamilton. I've made effectively a sonic portrait piece of the particular musical work of German accordion player Eva Zöllner, and the notion of the accordion itself. I've been commissioned to do such a piece also of a theatre space, where I effectively then made a compositional portrayal, sonic portrayal of the Nuffield Theatre in Lancaster, etc. And in this instance the piece became very much about looking to portray as well as meditate on what it is, what produces, in the Deleuzian sense, the CSAT and the assemblage, and what enables those emergent connections and production of works that I felt that this space and its people, the users of the space, and the sort of idea space that they also have, and what was present there. And the work aims to bring attention to and celebrate the interconnectedness and emergent potential and intensities of the CSAT assemblage, of a space dedicated to the creation and exploration of art and design works, ideas and connections, by tuning the listener to the spectral details and qualities of CSAT as originally revealed to me through nomadic listening and recording practice during the March 2020 Eastern DC residency. So on arrival, I got immediately excited about the building, the different spaces. There were so many different workshops, communal spaces, so many different uses, and there was a particular buzz and a vibe to the building. And I started going around the building, listening, as I always do, looking for exciting elements that might be perhaps drawing my ear to and sort of excite my compositional ideas. But what happened during the time is that I could become more and more interested in the sound of this building, and I was looking to find how does the building itself sound, and what is the relationship between the building and the users, more than perhaps the explicit different locations of a ceramics workshop or the foundry, etc. Because it was something about the potential of this assemblage space was that became really, really exciting for me. The piece is built in terms of, I was referring to the notion of a spine or a skeleton earlier. In this instance, it was a one continuous recording of a what could be said as a connecting space in the CSAT building, and that acted as the sort of foundation and the basis for the work's overall structure in terms of temporal duration and proportions, as well as I was then developing from that, and in relation to that, this spectromorphological flow of all the compositional elements. And I was utilizing primarily different types of layering techniques and folding in techniques when I was working on this. So I wanted to explicitly work with the contrasting elements of clear stratified elements or stratas, whilst I was looking to produce an affect or an effective hit of akin to a smooth space, if we again utilizing a terminology derived from Deleuze and Guattari, which is often very important element for my practice, particularly in relation to utilizing nomadic methodologies, etc. So what's important to note when you listen to the piece, that all the pitched elements and their relationships, as well as all rhythmic and temporal relationships presented in the piece, are as they were found or produced by the CSAT and its users itself. So I have been enhancing them, I have been drawing elements out, I've been in many cases combining or layering things, as I've said, but nowhere have I been changing those temporal or pitch relationship. It's been looking to really, really take the listener on a journey which starts from this space where I was doing the primary recording. It gets transformed into a more mirage-like a sense of that space, with the view that it returns the listener back into the very fine details that we can hear in that space where I was recording, which was this interconnecting space where people are traversing back and forth through different sets of doors between workshops, which we can hear in the distance. People are going up and down the staircases, as well as we can hear the elevator shaft, which was another very, very fascinating aspect of the building, because the elevator sound was near omnipresent, together with certain frequencies that were present in most of the building, as well as I went and then did some recordings of the electrical system of the building to bring the sort of fundamental infrastructure and the foundation of this space that makes it and allows it to run to the sort of compositional form. But to return to the last point, nowhere was I looking to change the sense of the rhythmic elements or the pitch elements. I was just really hoping to bring them to the fore, amplify them, with the view that by the time we return to the very end, the listener has been tuned into these nuances and this wonderful musical sonic world that is present in the building all the time, and we're able to appreciate finer and finer details as we progress through the piece. So, a few words about my practice. So, in relation to compositional work, I class myself as a fixed media composer. I these days operate in what I would call with post-acousmatic sensibility, and in relation to my materials and the purpose and the function of the piece, which often tends to be applied compositional practice, and it isn't happening in a hermeneutical sealed conditions. The notion of fixed media practice relates to the idea that I'm working primarily with recorded sound and through recorded sound. So whenever my pieces might feature instrumentalist or performance, etc., they typically have been recorded some stage of the process, as opposed to I'm looking to often work with live performers and scored elements in certain pieces. But the practice for maybe 25 years now, or more, I've lost track of count, has been focusing through recorded sound. What's the potential that it affords us? What are its particularities? And I've been fascinated by that this kind of creative work that's been afforded by creative practice. I alluded to the fact that there are many parallels to the approach in the Oriental bodywork that I've been clinically trained in relation to my compositional practice. And then the final element, what's important, that I have done a professional audio engineering work, particularly in mastering context, and where again it's all about this notion of working directly with the sound, massaging the sound, so to speak, if you would like. And this piece is a particular example of whereby all the sounds came from the building, enhancing them. In some cases they are as they were found, but everything has been stemmed from the recordings made at CSAT, and they have been processed in different ways in the digital audio workstation and then combined into the composite whole. So, as mentioned earlier, I was at CSAT in March 2020, just at the time when COVID-19 first wave was kicking in, so to speak, and the residency was effectively cut short. And as such, the original piece idea that I was working on with Dr. John Pickett from CSAT could not be realized as it was intended, but the way I've approached this piece has retained the fundamental principles and intent of what I was looking to do, which was again a portrayal. The original piece was to look at making a portrayal of set of loudspeakers that John is working on, and the composition for those loudspeakers is created by the sounds, all sounds, direct and indirectly related to the design and the making and the production of those loudspeakers. But that portrayal then shifted to be around CSAT residency in the first instance, but then more and more it became about the potential of that sort of space assemblage, what I was referring to. So I went around during the residency time, recording from running taps to most of the different workshop spaces, 3D printers, ceramics, etc. But it was this one place that I found in between spaces that you can see the photograph here on the right hand side, where I was really excited what was happening sonically, and I got this single recording run from there that I then used as the base for building the piece. You can see my recording setup, relatively simple. There's a single microphone going to a sound field. Sound device is a multi-channel recorder. The microphone, however, is a so-called native B format. It's a very specific, special microphone. It's created by a inventor called Martin Gantola in Finland, in a company called Nordic Audio Labs. There are only a handful of these in the world, and what's particularly notable about the microphone, as there are many ambisonic microphones available in the world, is that it has exceedingly low self-noise floor, which enabled that we got to be able to hear in the recording some very different types of detail that one could capture in pretty much any other at the kind of sonic quality that we got pretty much with any other recording system. Because the other notable feature of this microphone is its the color of the noise floor that it does. Why I'm talking about this and highlight the importance of that is that the original piece, working with John and his transducers, was the importance of the transducer color, and the transducer was fundamentally important. I have made this spec, the kit, to enable me to capture in as transparent terms and as I can, so that we can then work with the coloring utilizing John's transducers. However, how it became, this setup enabled me to do this very detailed dive into the sonic world that happens in the CSAT building. So a few quick notes to add to what already been said about in the program notes, and my sort of contextualizing of that around sort of compositional approach, intent and development. My compositional practice is very simple in many ways. I am thinking in terms of there's an input of something that's been worked with or shaped somehow, and that produces an output, a very simple input sculpt output model. The intent here was explicitly to produce an effective hit and a enhanced awareness of physical presence in the moment through this listening practice, which I first carried out as part of the work that I did during the residency, which I then continued doing when I was back in my studio space. And what I wanted to really be able to produce or provide or give or create an opportunity for the listener to be able to experience on a corporeal level a different kind of a relationship to sound and space that we can only do through careful listening and of certain type of material. So there wasn't anything particularly innovative in terms of processes. I've used some very new tools in terms of how I was generating some of the pitch materials, and there's some very clever machine learning based tools for enhancing certain spatial elements, etc. But that is all that's a side note really. The whole focus was about how do we bring in and retain in this sense of this space, and how that grows and overlaps and transforms the listener in this sonic space and sound. As I experience it and teach about and work with it, is not as a cerebral activity or a cerebral thing. It's a physical sound pressure being manifested in space, and it has this amazing power to move us in different ways. And I wanted it to be that experience that we can settle into this. It is not about multiple ideas, even though I referred to some of the conceptual reference frames earlier. It is about that sense of bringing the focus to the presence, and that will produce in its own right different kind of a series and assemblages of connections to the whoever listens to the piece. So finally, thank you to everyone who I met at CSAT. I found it really inspirational. I had a lot of exciting conversations. I was also fascinated and very privileged to have been observed a lot of people doing their own practices. I found it truly inspirational experience. Thank you for Alexander's and everyone in the Eastern DC CSAT team for making this happen in the first instance. Massive thanks to John for wanting to collaborate with me in the first instance, and hopefully we'll do it in a different way, given that the disruption that happened through COVID took the project into a different direction. Thank you to my colleague Gemma here in Falmouth University for helping me with the Welsh title. And then finally, and most importantly, massive thank you to my partner, Dr. D. Ferret, because without you and your patience and help and support, the residency wouldn't have happened, and certainly this piece wouldn't have happened. And finally, thank you very much for listening to this, and I thank you for listening to the piece, and I hope you will find something resonating with you with that piece and in relation to appreciation of Cardiff School of Art and Design. Thank you. Bye.